I discovered true scary stories that whisper in the rain. And one followed me home. I never should have opened that door. That moment hangs in my mind, heavy and pulsing like a strobe light. I was just trying to escape the relentless downpour. The world outside drowning in shadows. The air was thick and electric, charged with something I couldn't quite name. My routine? Simple. I'd walk the same path home every night after my shift at the diner, the scent of fried food still clinging to my clothes. The rain fell in sheets, creating a symphony of splashes. But that night felt different. The whispering wind seemed to taunt me, carrying secrets, sinister shadows lurking just beyond my view. The night grew colder, each drop feeling like an icy blade against my skin as I approached the old library. A place filled with dusty shelves and long-forgotten stories. The door stood ajar. My heart raced. Sunlight had long abandoned this place, swallowed by darkness. Still faint whispers echoed inside. Was it the wind? Or something more? I stepped closer, the chill crawling up my spine. Shadows twisted and danced in the corners like figures just out of reach. Suddenly, a loud thud came from within. I froze, breath hitching in my throat. Someone or something was inside. The floorboards creaked underfoot. An unsettling invitation. I peered into the darkness. My pulse pounded in my ears. I thought I saw a figure. A silhouette. Just a flash, but it sent shivers racing down my arms. The quiet was deafening now, interrupted only by my own ragged breathing. I should have turned away, but the whispering called to me like a lullaby of fear. Each step deeper into the library was a battle against the instinct to run. Books lay strewn about, pages flipping as if touched by unseen hands. A cold draft snaked around me. I felt it close in, tightening like a noose. My hands trembled. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind me. Panic flooded my chest. And then I heard it. A soft whisper like a breath on my ear. Stay. My heart raced. I couldn't see anything, just the dark shadow closing in. It beckoned closer. I was trapped. The walls felt like they were closing in. I wasn't alone anymore. And just before the noise swallowed me whole, a figure emerged from the shadows, impossibly tall, looming like a nightmare. My scream froze in my throat. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure loomed, its features obscured by the shadows swirling around it like a living cloak. Each breath I took felt heavier, thick with fear, while my mind raced, trying to rationalize the apparition before me. Its elongated limbs stretched out, grotesque in the flickering light, a silhouette of visceral terror. I couldn't run. I couldn't scream. The rasping whisper grew louder, enveloping me in a chorus of chilling incantations. Stay. It beckoned again, the word wrenching itself free from the shadows, tugging at my sanity like a puppet on a string. A whirlwind of emotions crashed over me: panic, resignation, an overwhelming curiosity that repulsed and intrigued me all at once. I was no longer just a spectator. In this dark theater of horrors, I was part of the performance. As the figure took a step forward, the entire room seemed to vibrate with an ancient energy. It exuded a blend of despair and allure, like a moth drawn to a flame. I clenched my fists, desperate to regain control, but a voice whispered in the recesses of my mind, tempting me to surrender, to embrace whatever this was. Sudden movement caught my eye, a shadow flitting among the toppled bookshelves, a flash of movement that set my heart racing faster. I turned sharply, only to find the silhouette growing closer, its form now stretching toward me as if trying to bridge an impossible gap. Each second felt like hours, the shadows hungering for my fear, thickening the air until I could hardly breathe. Without thinking, I reached for the nearest book, the spine cracked and weathered, desperate for anything to fend off the encroaching darkness. I hurled it at the figure. The book struck the ground with a dull thud, but instead of recoiling, the thing simply took another step forward, impossibly closer, its pulse of energy consuming the very light around it. Stay. It emitted a sound, perhaps a laugh, Perhaps a sob, something high and twisted, resonating deep within my chest. Reality warped around me, the room stretching like a living entity. I could feel the echoes of centuries past whispering their secrets as if the very foundations of the library were alive, seeping stories of longing and despair into the air. Then came a surge of wind, swirling like a tempest, sending papers and dust flying into the air. The walls creaked ominously, while the shadows seemed to pulse more fiercely, reaching toward me, clawing at my very essence. The space distorted, and I lost sight of the figure, swallowed by the chaos. A mocking voice filled my mind. "They waited for you." I spun around, searching for a way out, but the room had contorted beyond recognition, a labyrinth of darkness now, as the whispers grew into a cacophony of voices, hundreds of them converging into a single dreadful intent. "Join us." I stumbled backward until my back hit the wall, the chill of the splits against my skin sending further tremors through me. Frantically, I searched for another exit, but every way I turned, shadows closed in. The fear tightened around my throat, and tears sprang to my eyes. I was losing myself. "Don't you remember?" The shadowy figure reappeared, now right in front of me. Its face was a shifting mask, one moment smooth and human, the next a grotesque caricature. "You've always been a part of this story." Then in a surge of madness the shadow lunged. I flinched, but instead of its cold grasp upon my flesh, it passed through me, igniting my every nerve with a dreadful chill. The whispers swirled into a frenzy, coalescing into a single piercing scream that shattered the pain of silence. I collapsed to my knees, gasping for air, the world around me swaying like a dream teetering on the edge of nightmares. It was not just my fear, it was theirs, all of it now thrumming within me. I was connected to something sinister, a line tethering me to the horrors buried in this library. As I fought to regain my composure, the lights flickered ominously, and the ground beneath me trembled. Suddenly a blinding flash illuminated the shelves, revealing faces terrified, anguished, their eyes wide with desperation. Trapped between worlds. I was not just an observer. I was glowing with their stories, their hauntings. The figure reformed before me, towering, a grim sentinel amidst the chaos. "You belong to us now. Embrace it." I opened my mouth to scream, but the sound twisted into the very echoes of the trapped souls around me. They all converged, engulfing me in a tidal wave of moist shadows, their voices melding into a single chant that resonated with an unbearable force. And just as I thought the suffocating tide would pull me under forever, the library's doors burst open, light spilling in a blinding brightness cutting through the darkness, revealing a shadow standing there, silhouetted against the rain-soaked night beyond. My heart surged, a breathing being? Or the new horror that awaited me? Before I could comprehend the truth, that figure turned, revealing its face. Muffled memories flashed in my mind, one piece after another, drawing the terrifying realization of who stood before me, a ghost of my own past, a wraith that had followed me home. In that moment of recognition, a shriek tore through my consciousness, and the library began to collapse around me, shadows clawing at anything they could reach, and I realized I might not be the one stepping back from the darkness. It was a far colder embrace that lay ahead. The air crackled with energy as I stared into the eyes of the figure, my heart racing with a mixture of dread and recognition. It was the very specter I had brushed past on countless sleepless nights, just a fleeting shadow behind the curtain of my memory. Its presence, now unmasked, sent a chill crawling down my spine. "Why are you here?" I managed to stammer, the question barely comprehensible through the chaos that roared around me. "Home," it breathed, its voice a haunting echo that sent shivers through my soul. "You invited me in. You were always meant to bring me back." The shadows around us quivered, fluctuating as if they were alive, hungry for the energy of that moment. Behind me, the library rattled ominously, books falling from their perches like birds startled from a nest. Each thud struck my heart like a drum, marking a countdown that fueled my terror. "I don't understand," I cried out, scrambling backward until I felt the weight of the wall pressing against my back. The walls seemed to close in, the grotesque faces still illuminated by the flickering lights, twisting in agony. The very fabric of this place spoke of nightmares that had long seeped into its stones, witnessing darkness that had entwined itself with history. The figure stepped closer, its form shifting and warping, always just out of reach of understanding. "You were chosen. The connection binds us. They wait, they linger. Their desires have become your desires. With each word the library erupted into madness. The air thickened with a sorrowful wail, and the entwined spirits of the damned lunged toward me, their horror filling the space as memories and despair collided like thunder. As they reached for me I saw flashes of their lives, of moments that led them to rest among the shadows forever, betrayal, longing, despair. All of it twisted together with my own past. Desperation gripped me as I turned back to the doorway, the light shimmering like a mirage. "Let me out, please," I yelled, but the figure blocked my escape, its presence a living wall of agony and regret. "Your escape is within. That which you flee towards is what you fear most," it said, its voice dripping with a sinister sweetness that pushed me to the brink of madness. Suddenly the library shuddered violently, and a cacophony of whispers crescendoed into a symphony of despair. I felt it deep within my bones. This was not merely a haunting, it was a gathering of spirits in their moment of reckoning. They were rising like smoke, coiling around me, weaving stories of their own into my psyche. Each spirit sought solace but found none, each plea merging with my own burgeoning terror. As I realized I was not merely witnessing their suffering, I was absorbing it, becoming part of this wretched lore. The shadows whispered a "Name me" as a wave of agony crashed over me, fracturing my will. "No," I screamed, fighting against the tide. Yet the struggle seemed futile. I could feel their longing intertwining with my own fears, warping my very essence into something darker, something that could never return. Then abruptly, a voice broke through the tumult, sharp and clear amid the chaos. "You cannot deny what you are." It was a new presence, commanding and fierce, breaking the veil of haze that clouded my mind. I looked up to see another figure stepping into the fray, a woman, her face aglow with an ethereal light. Unlike the others, there was a fierce determination within her gaze that set her apart. "Do not let them take you," she shouted, her voice slicing through the whispers like a blade. "You have the power to choose." The library trembled once more, erupting in an unholy uproar as the shadowy figures howled, reaching for her, for me. "Choose," she urged, her voice ringing like a bell, and in that singular moment, the weight of every decision, every fear, coalesced into a single thought, first ignited in my mind and then erupting in an agonizing torrent that threatened to drown me under its intensity. But as I took a breath, steeling myself to grasp the reality, the library quaked violently again. The doors behind me, what had once been doors, closed with a resounding bang, sealing off any escape. The shadows lurched toward us, swirling in a frenzy, and the anguished faces of the trapped souls became grotesquely clear, each one extending their hands, pleading for salvation, dragging me closer to the edge of a precipice I could no longer discern. "Make your choice before the threshold breaks." Her voice rose above the maelstrom, echoing in the corners of my panic-stricken mind. And before I could respond, a deep rumble erupted from the depths of the library, as if the very building were alive. The lights blinked out, plunging us into darkness, and the last thing I saw was the shadow of the woman stretching towards me, desperate and determined. Then, the ground beneath me gave way, the weight of history's forgotten crashing down, and as I fell into the abyss, a scream erupted from my throat, a sound that echoed into nothingness, and in that void, I realized I had not chosen yet. Whatever awaited me in the depths was not merely haunting, I was bound to confront my own fractured fate. But just before impact, a flicker of light caught my eye, darting into the shadows, drawing closer, and I realized that maybe, perhaps, it was not too late for redemption or for true horror yet unseen. The fall felt endless, a descent through a suffocating abyss where gravity seemed to warp and twist at the edges of reality. In the inky blackness, the haunting echoes of the library faded, replaced by the sound of water lapping against creaking wood. I landed hard, disoriented, and sprawled on something cold and wet, and as I pushed myself up, I was enveloped by an overpowering scent of damp earth and decayed. My surroundings came into focus, revealing an underground chamber illuminated by flickering torchlight. It was a cavernous space, filled with remnants of what appeared to be an old village, swallowed by forgotten time. Crumbling walls bore markings I couldn't decipher, but they pulsed with a dark energy that sang through the very air. A line of jagged shadows danced upon the stone like marionettes in a sinister play, and the soft whisper of water echoed somewhere in the distance. I was no longer in the library, or perhaps I had never truly left it. I was trapped in a liminal space crafted from the collective dread of all those who had come before me, each of their stories echoing within these walls of despair. As I pushed myself to my feet, the memories of the faces I had seen, the longing souls reaching for help, crawled back to me. They weren't just lost but were yearning, drawn to some dark truth hidden beneath layers of stone and guilt. Their stories now merging with my own, gnawed at my insides like a relentless hunger. I took a step forward, my feet squelching into the damp earth. Every footfall sent ripples of ancient energy coursing through the ground. In that pulsating silence, I felt a watchful gaze upon me, a weighty presence lingering just beyond view. My skin prickled and instinct urged me to flee, but I pressed on, driven by an unseen force. Ahead, I caught a flicker of movement. A figure darted into the shadows, and for a brief moment, I could see the outline of a child. Panic washed over me as I called out, "Hello? Are you?" But the word died in my throat, swallowed by the deepening darkness. Almost as if summoned by my voice, the whispers surged and coiled around me, a symphony of silence filled with sorrowful sighs. "Help us," they chanted, a collective wail that reverberated off the walls, steeping the air in despair. "You must find her, she is the key." "Find who?" I demanded, fear coiling tighter in my chest. But the shadows offered no answers. Instead, the darkness deepened, swirling around me with an almost malicious intent, as if daring me to venture further into its depths. Determined to reclaim my footing in a reality turning more grotesque with each moment, I pressed onward, heart thudding in my ears. Gaps in the stone revealed remnants of ancient paintings, twisted images of people caught in moments of terror and ecstasy, faces I had never seen yet somehow recognized, their eyes pleading with me for release. A chill ran down my spine as I glimpsed the figures of the damned once more, lines of luminous energy drawing them towards something deeper within the cavern, beckoning them, insatiable in their desire. And as I drew closer to the source of that energy, my heart sank, knowing I could not belong to this world without surrendering my own. The ground trembled beneath me as I stumbled into an opening that opened up into a large chamber. In the center stood a stone altar, slick with moisture and surrounded by candles flickering with strange, ghostly flames. Atop the altar lay a tattered journal, the pages fluttering ominously in a wind that should not exist underground. The energy here was palpable, almost alive, thrumming with an unholy pulse. As I stepped closer, an illusion of the child reappeared, crying out for help, her voice haunting in its desperation. "You must choose," she cried, her face filled with terror, yet her eyes shone with an eerie clarity. "Free me before it's too late." Just then the shadows rippled, writhing like a serpent disturbed. From them, a figure emerged, a grotesque silhouette of twisted limbs and haunting hollow eyes, pulsating with malice. It locked its gaze onto me, and with a sinister grin, it whispered, "You are one of us now." My heart raced as dread coiled like a serpent in my chest, and the weight of the decision pressed upon me. Would I give in, lose myself to this twisted fate, or dare to fight against the encroaching darkness? I was standing at the edge of an unimaginable abyss, not just of the soul, but of reality itself, and as I reached for the journal, the ground shook once again, walls closing in around me, and the shadows lunged forward, shrieking in a cacophony of rage as I felt eyes watching from the void, waiting, wanting, and then everything went black. In that darkness I understood. There was no escaping the truth that awaited. The choice had to be made, and not just mine, but for the souls caught in this torment. Would I become the savior or their next victim? And as my hand brushed the journal, a ferocious roar erupted around me, shaking the very foundation of this nightmarish realm, leaving me teetering on the brink of surrender or rebellion. Then a voice echoed from the shadows, chilling me to the bone, "It's time to join us, one way or another." I stumbled through the suffocating darkness, an endless stretch of pitch-black shadows that danced around me like ominous phantoms. The whispering voices intensified, merging into an unholy chant that resonated through the chamber, sending vibrations rattling through my bones. I felt as though I was standing at the center of a web spun from the despair of countless souls, each thread tugging at me, drawing me closer to a reality that was both foreign and terrifying. The journal rested heavily beneath my fingers, beckoning me with an urgency that pulsated like a heartbeat. Tendrils of darkness crawled closer, whispering sweet nothings filled with promises of power if I were to surrender. I could feel their grip tighten around my wrist, coaxing me to open the book and set forth a forbidden knowledge that came with a price. As I ripped my gaze from the altar toward the sprawling shadows cast by flickering candles, a chilling sensation washed over me. The child's silhouette re-emerged, tears glistening on her ghostly cheeks. "Please, you must find her," she implored, but her words were lost in a wave of ghastly laughter that echoed through the cavern. Around me, shapes surged and recoiled, compelling me to witness whatever horrors they had reveled in for far too long. My heart raced, not just with fear, but a twisted excitement at the thought of uncovering the truth that lay hidden. Each pulse drummed in my ears, mingling with the echoes of the Forsaken that clawed at my consciousness. I could see now beyond the shadows, fragments of memory emerged, weaving together the lost faces that had once been full of life. In a flash, I caught sight of an ethereal woman wrapped in swirling mists, her eyes gleaming like shards of ice. She reached out to me, her lips forming silent words that felt like desperate pleas. Straining to hear, I stepped toward her. "Find me," she mouthed, and in that instant, her expression twisted into anguish. The shadows lunged forward, hissing in turmoil as I took another step closer to her. Then with a sickening lurch, the ground beneath me convulsed, causing me to stumble back. I barely regained my footing when the figure of the grotesque silhouette materialized again, now standing directly before me, closer than before. Its hollow eyes burned with a predatory hunger that made my skin prickle. "You seek her," it hissed, its voice like the scraping of nails on stone. "But do you dare to claim what is not yours?" "Who is she?" I gasped, pressing my back against the altar for support, clutching the journal like a lifeline. The being merely smirked, a grotesque twist of features that felt both familiar and loathsome. "She is the key." "Yes, but keys often unlock things better left alone." With that, the shadows erupted around me in a frenzy, a maelstrom of thrashing limbs vying for my attention. I fought to resist, but the overwhelming noise and chaotic energy stole my breath and sanity. As the oppressive darkness surged forward, I remembered the journal and steeled my resolve. With trembling hands, I flipped open its brittle pages, illuminated by the candle's ghostly flames. Strange symbols, incomprehensible prayers, and tortured cries adorned each leaf. Desperately, I searched for a clue, a hint that might unravel the mystery of the woman and her connection to this forsaken place. And then, I found a passage that screamed at me from the depths of the yellowed paper, their letters dark and twisted like a serpent coiling around its prey. To summon the lost, one must offer the soul of the bound. Before I could fully grasp its implications, the shadow surged once again, wrapping around me, clinging to my thoughts, my fears, my very essence. The malicious figure loomed larger, its laughter ringing in my ears. "Will you offer yours?" it taunted before it pulled away, leaving me trembling in its wake. The air grew thick and charged with a palpable tension, as if the shadows themselves held their breath, waiting for my decision, the line between savior and victim blurring in an instant. The child's voice echoed again, more desperate than before. "Please don't let them take you. You're our only hope." But was hope even real in a place swallowed by despair? Just as the energy reached a fever pitch, a deafening roar erupted, the kind that reverberated deep within the soul and threatened to shatter reality itself. It was a sound filled with anguish, rage, and an ominous promise of calamity. The walls shuddered, the candles flickered violently, their flames distorting into grotesque figures of anguish, and in that moment, the shadows quivered as they recoiled, and suddenly, everything went still. Beneath the altar, the stone began to grind and shift, splintering open to reveal a darkened chasm that pulsed with an ominous heartbeat. A soft, tender voice whispered from its depths, intertwining with the dense air around me. "Come closer, my love, it's safer here with me." My heart leapt into my throat as I realized the journal had begun to burn in my grasp, fissures of dark energy radiating from its spine, blurring the lines of reality with each passing second. With every ounce of courage I could muster, I stepped back, torn between the suffocating pull of the abyss and the desperate cries of the lost still trapped within these cursed walls. As the shadows screamed in fury and the ground split further open, I was left frozen in place, on the brink of a choice that would change everything. And then the abyss yawned wide, the chasm glimmering with hints of tortured faces and silent screams, beckoning me down into its depths, awaiting the final plunge into darkness. The chasm's edge wavered ominously before me, a gaping maw thirsting for sacrifice. Shadows writhed within, flickering in and out of focus, caught in a terrible dance of despair. Panic clawed at my throat as I looked down into that inky void, feeling the pull of its cold breath inviting me to step forward. Efforts to turn away became futile, as if the shadows conspired against me, entwining themselves around my ankles, pulling me ever closer to the brink. Join us. They beckoned, their whispers rising into a hypnotic chorus of longing and betrayal. The little girl's face flashed before me again. Her pleading eyes pierced the veil of darkness. Please don't listen. You mustn't. Instinct screamed at me to run, to escape, yet every fiber of my being craved the truth behind the woman of the shadows, and who I might become if I chose to accept the darkness. The journal scorched against my skin, the primal energy radiating from it pulsating through my veins, drowning out rational thought. I gripped it tighter, forcing myself to read another line, as if knowledge could grant me the power to defy the overwhelming urge surrounding me. My eyes darted across the page, that serpent-like text taunting me further. A string of barbed letters weaving a tapestry of horror. Beware the one who calls you. She knows your heart. But who was she? Was it the ethereal woman with ice-blue eyes, or the shadowy figure that promised secrets? I could hardly comprehend it when a tremor shut down my thoughts, an earthquake of despair echoing through the cavern as fear surged anew. The chasm roared in response, sending a mist of darkness swirling around me, an eager audience waiting for a spectacle to know. I shouted, clawing back against the power of the void. I refuse. But the shadows howled in protest, and with each shriek memories flooded my mind. They weren't just echoes of the past, but harbingers of a twisted future. Faces flickered into existence. Those I had loved, those I feared to lose as if roused from slumber. The walls shuddered violently, stones splitting, sending debris cascading all around. She waits for you. The hollow voice trembled, its grotesque grin shifting closer, hunger radiating from every shadowy corner. Open the gate. Release her. Suddenly, the altar beneath my feet groaned ominously, cracking as tremors surged upward, offering me a glimpse of what lay beneath a mass of night that felt sentient, shifting, writhing as it reached for the light that I had become by simply standing there. In a surge of terror, I hurled the journal into the chasm. It spiraled down, illuminating the darkness for a moment before the blackness swallowed it whole. Silence fell with the ferocity of impending doom. The energy around me thrummed still, the very air vibrating with palpable tension, but the relief was short-lived. From that void, an unnatural laugh, a cackle that sent shards of ice racing down my spine, broke the stillness. Fool! You think you can escape? You have freed me, but at what cost? And as if in response to its words, thousands of ethereal hands burst forth from the chasm, clawing and grasping towards me. They reached with a haunting grace, shaking with desperation, hungry for warmth, tethered to the souls trapped within. I staggered back, panic gripping me as I turned to run, but the shadows bounded from every direction, encircling me with chilling intent. No escape remained. You will never leave. You will return to us. They screamed as the figures of the lost collided around me, faces pressed against the veil of darkness, pleading for their claimed salvation. The child's voice rang out clearly above the malevolent hum of shrieks. You have the power. Don't let it take you. I couldn't discern where the shadows ended and my fear began, but somewhere deep inside lay a flicker of strength, an ember of hope that threatened to trip the delicate balance of despair entangling me. Summoning all I had, I let out a scream, a declaration of existence amongst the cacophony. Steadying myself with heart pounding, I plunged my hands into the swirling shadows, fighting against the paralysis that gripped my limbs. No, I will not succumb. I roared, feeling the air electrify around me as light burst from within me, slashing through the darkness. The laughter faltered, twisted into cries of anguish as I felt the shadows recoil. But in their retreat something else stirred, rising from the bubbling depths. A shape unmistakably human, unfurling from the chaos, her features obscured but unmistakably familiar. I froze, the specter's face gradually coming into focus, the haunting resemblance igniting a terror more profound than anything that had come before. It was her, the woman with shards of ice for eyes, but the hate etched there twisted my heart into knots of raw fear. Why did you lure me here? I gasped as she stepped closer, reaching out with hands that shimmered darkly against the flickering candlelight, the shadows whispering her name, a name I thought lost to time. Because, dear heart, she replied, her voice a melody that felt like home and hell intertwined. I am the beginning and I will be your end. And in an instant the world spiralized away, shadows sweeping over my vision, pulling me back towards the chasm, back to the endless night. The last thing I saw was the hollow darkness, alive, hungry, and ready to feast on the remnants of my fractured soul. The air grew thick with the fetid breath of the abyss as I fell, plummeting through layers of darkness that wrapped around me like the caress of a long-lost lover. The whispers grew louder, the voices of the forgotten clawing at my sanity, each one a siren song pulling me into their gathering. I felt them tugging at my essence, scraping at the edges of my mind, all longing for companionship in their torment. Suddenly, the weight vanished, and I landed unceremoniously on a cold, clammy surface. My heart raced as I staggered to gain my footing in pitch blackness, every shadow shifting and twisting around me like the tendrils of a grotesque nightmare. The scent of decay lingered insidiously, intermingled with a chilling sweetness that threatened to suffocate me, and the dim light of a flickering candle somewhere far off. I spotted her, the woman I had seen moments ago at the mouth of the chasm. She stood ethereal, an apparition of my darkest dreams, and I could sense that her presence bled malevolence. Yet there lay despair hidden within the pools of her ice-blue eyes, a reflection of my own fear surfacing from a distant abyss. "Did you wish to truthfully know the darkness?" she purred, her voice laced with echoes of laughter. "You dared to look into the void, but you are blind to what truly lurks within." Each word was a dagger, driving deeper as I pondered what truth she would unveil and what price I would pay for it. Reeling from her words, I forced myself to look around, scanning the environment, an endless corridor stretching into the murk, walls slick with moisture that dripped regularly like the slow ticking of a death clock. I could hear it now, a soft trickling, a mad melody orchestrating the remnants of the damned, the relentless drumming of something lurking just beyond perception. "Stay with me," she beckoned, a smile ghosting over her lips, "and I will awaken your true self." Shivers raced down my spine. I inhaled sharply, feeling the chill invade my lungs. What have you done to them? Why do they suffer? I struggled to make sense of her invitation, wary of falling deeper into her alluring allure. Ghostly silhouettes crept along the edges of my vision, their forms flickering as if made from hot air and despair. "They belong to me, just as you do now," she said softly, and in that moment, the shadows veto her command to her will. Their whispers crescendoed, wrapping around me, drawing me toward visions of pain and sorrow etched into the very walls. I could see them now, tortured souls trapped in eternal anguish, their indistinct faces melding into one another. My breath quickened as I recognized their features, my friends, my family, all consumed by an insatiable darkness that promised liberation through suffering. "Oh," I cried out, shaking my head violently, trying to sever the connection I felt with their plight. "This isn't how it's supposed to be." Her laughter resonated, deep and hollow. "You are free to choose, but do you truly wish for freedom? Or will you allow despair to fester?" She stepped forward, her hand gliding upwards, and the shadows writhed in ecstatic frenzy, as if anticipating my surrender. With each heartbeat, my faculties began to scream to flee, to escape the inevitable doom that thrummed through the air. But the warmth within me faded, feeling the dizzying pull of her darkness, dragging my weary mind into longing, into doubt. A temptation ripe and deadly blossomed within the recesses of my being. "Join them. Be the cycle," she murmured, the words slithering seductively into my heart. "The truth will set you free, but only if you embrace the darkness." But what darkness did she truly speak of? The path stretched before me, lined with shadows eager to ensnare me, just as it had ensnared those who had come before. I could hear the cries of those souls, each a reminder of a choice once made. Fear gripped me, yet my heart ached for understanding, an answer hidden in the black tide pulling me ever closer to her embrace. And suddenly, a strength surged within me, fueled by desperation, a glimmer of purpose in this swirling chaos. I screamed into the suffocating darkness, "I want be yours. I'll find my path, even if it leads me to destruction." The shadows erupted in rage, furious shrieks of souls indignant at my defiance. The woman's expression morphed from delight to fury in a flash. "You cannot break free. The mark is on you, etched within your very soul. You cannot escape your fate." In that instant, the flickering candlelight vanished, plunging us into complete darkness, an overwhelming silence smothering me. Dread coiled itself tightly around my throat. I could sense movement beside me, swirling currents rippling through the very air, whispering promises of fear and havoc. Cloaked figures began to emerge from the shadows, their forms reassuringly familiar yet grotesque, lost friends and family, their eyes hollow but calling out for me. "Help us," they chanted, an unsettling harmony that ebbed and flowed as the shadows grappled for dominance. You brought us here. Don't turn away. I struggled, torn between their outstretched hands, the warmth of love mingled with the chilling touch of despair. The woman laughed again, her figure ever shifting, a dark beacon in the torment. You will choose. The shadows await your decision, and then there will be no escape. I opened my mouth to speak, but the shadows engulfed me once more, pulling at my essence, glistening with insatiable hunger. As they drew me into the whirlpool of despair, I caught a glimpse of a door, a mere crack of light spilling from its edges, a promise of escape amidst the suffocating void. But the darkness swelled, a beast awakening, as the last vestiges of illusion fell away. The voices rose to a fever pitch, the echoes of souls merging into one powerful lament, and I felt my grip slipping. With one desperate lunge I reached for the light, determined to tear through the fabric of fate even as I felt the shadows tightening around me. Stop! I screamed against the cacophony, barreling toward the flickering glow. I will not become you. But just as my fingers brushed that sliver of light, a cold hand latched onto my wrist, a grip that felt like death settling into my bones. Where do you think you're going? The woman purred, her breath a tempest wrapping around me. The last echo of her laughter dripped like ice into my veins as darkness closed in, and as the light flickered and faded, the door sealed shut, leaving me suspended between despair and the insatiable hunger of the void, revealing a dreadful truth. I was nowhere near free, and the true horror of my choices was only just beginning. Through the palpable darkness, I felt the weight of despair settle on me like a shroud, echoing the silence that followed the closing of the door. The hand around my wrist tightened, a chilling caress of cold fingers that pushed against my pulse, threatening to sap the life from me. I blinked against the void. The flickers of candlelight had transformed into a storm of shadow, twisting and contorting the very air around me as I was pulled into the heart of eternity. A flare of panic ignited within my chest, and I rested my gaze upward, searching for the woman amidst the shadows. Her figure flickered like a mirage, eluding my grasp as her laughter danced around me, taunting, mocking, always just out of reach. You are so close and yet so far, she crooned, her words a symphony of silver-lined chaos woven into the fabric of darkness surrounding us. Let me go, I cried, the plea spiraling into the inky blackness, carrying the weight of broken promises and lost souls. The echoes of the damned seemed to reverberate with my words, their silent screams merging into a gripping cacophony of lament. My heart pounded erratically, matching the frenzied drumbeat of the shadows closing in, suffocating with their ennui and no escape from inevitability. The shadows hissed, serpent-like whispers slithering through my mind, wrapping around my thoughts like vines of despair. I felt them probe, seeking the hidden crevices of my fear, dredging up images of laughter morphed into tears, of love that turned to chaos. My friends and family hovered on the brink of my consciousness, their faces shifting, revealing anguish wrought with a burning intensity that fired my resolve with every ounce of strength. I tore my gaze from the shadowed figures circling around me, inhaling that rancid air thick with despair. My mind raced through a fog of memories, fragments of joyous moments suddenly replaced by grim recollections, all clawing at me, demanding acknowledgement. I bent my will against the darkness, forcing it back, pushing against the grip of the woman who still claimed a part of me. I am not your puppet. Are you not? She countered, the eerie sweetness dripping with malice, dancing around the remnants of my will. Her form flickered disjointedly, now imposing and ethereal, an ever-shifting visage that danced between predation and allure. You've come so far. Can you truly sever the bond? I felt the weight of her gaze upon me, an icy jealousy that coiled around my heart, urging me to submit. No, I yelled one last time, shoving against the tide despite the shadows that lashed back in defiance, tearing at the fabric of my will and sanity. In a desperate act of defiance, I gathered all the love I had left to shield against the souls lost in torment. A spark ignited. It trembled within my core. I drew it forth, forcing it into a beam of light, pure, unyielding. The shadows howled in fury, flailing as the light shattered their grip. I could see them retreating, their faces contorted with rage. But I was not yet free. Too late, the woman hissed as I inadvertently turned back to her, my power flickering like a candle on the verge of snuffing out. You cannot destroy what you have embraced. In a last-ditch effort, I hurled the incandescent light toward her, watching as it engulfed her in a blinding refraction of emotion. But instead of disintegrating, she absorbed it, melding the light into her darkness, becoming more substantial. With her newfound strength, she lunged at me, and the shadows surged, pulling the earth from beneath my feet. I fell, grasping for stability, clawing through the abyss as my screams echoed back at me, distorted by the taunting laughter of the damned. The ground gave way, and I plummeted through the darkness into an abyssal void, an endless descent that sent my spirit spiraling deeper. I tumbled and twisted, the freezing air stretching around me like icy fingers, pulling at me, clawing through the fabric of my being. And in the distance, something stirred, a familiar presence that pricked at the edges of my mind. The air grew thick with the scent of rain, the rich, loamy aroma that danced between the realms of violence and tranquility. I landed with a sickening thud, the cold earth splattering around me like a shattering heart. Confusion surged as flickers of light danced around me, and I stumbled to my feet. Disoriented, before me loomed an expanse of dense fog, the rain falling in heavy drops that whispered against the ground as if sharing secrets with the very earth. But something was different. The rain began to morph, twinkling under the dim light in a dance of twisted reflection. The droplets shimmered with maleficence, pricking at my skin like tiny knives, siphoning away the warmth of my very essence, revealing the darker face of this serene drumming. "Did you think you could escape?" A voice resonated from the darkness, low and sultry like the wind over graves, causing my breath to hitch in my throat. The figure stepped from the fog, visible now as a grotesque silhouette poised to devour my sanity. My heart raced as dread nestled firmly in my gut. I had not vanquished the shadows, I had only unwittingly drawn them closer. Neither the woman from the chasm nor the specters of my past had prepared me for Tisan, altar of whispers hidden by the rain, the very embodiment of horror that would rise from the abyss I had invoked. "Mama?" I quavered, my own voice strangled as I stared into the empty eyes of a corporeal reflection. It was too late. I knew now that some horrors take form in the memory of loss, and in this moment it felt like a homecoming, a reunion that promised to seal my fate. As the terror deepened and the rain closed in, I felt every shadow clawing at my essence, merging with the figure before me. She opened her mouth to speak, words spilling out like venom, each syllable a thread wrapping around my soul. I was about to unleash a cry for help when the shadows silenced me with a cold, suffocating grip, and just like that, the rain's refrain shifted, a chorus of souls returning home, a chant of sorrow glittering through the darkness as they beckoned me closer to the brink, their hollow eyes glowing like fireflies lost in the fog. I realized then, as my heart sank, that I was not alone, and the night had only begun to whisper of the horrors it had yet to unveil. The storm grew heavier, churning the shadows in a macabre ballet around me. The figure, me mother, stepped closer, her features wavering like a mirage. "You've come for me," she murmured, the words sweet as honey but laced with a bitter undertone. The shadows around her writhed, pulling their inky fingers through the rain, warping the air between us. I staggered back, disbelief tearing through the remnants of my sanity. "No, you're not her," I gasped, the memories flooding my mind, laughter echoing in the halls of my childhood, her embrace warm against the evening chill. But these, a hollow specter with eyes like abyss, was no reunion. It was a cruel deception, one crafted by the shadows that consumed both space and time. "Every drop of rain you feel is a story," she continued softly, her voice enveloping me like a lover's caress, both inviting and terrifying. "It carries the essence of those who came before, their pain, their grief, all etched in the fabric of this world. They are here with me and they wish to meet you." As she gestured into the darkness, shards of memories erupted around us. I gasped as faces rose from the ground, forming the silhouettes of departed souls woven into the rain-soaked earth. Each face bore a story, a sorrow long mourned, their mouths agape as though wailing into the storm, begging to be heard. An icy chill ran down my spine as a ghost floated closer, its sorrowful gaze boring into me, the pain of a life lost hanging between us like an unspoken accusation. "Join us," it whispered, a sound that seemed to come from 1,000 voices, a harmony of anguish. "We've waited for you." "No," I screamed, the sound a frail protest against the power surrounding me. I turned, desperately seeking an escape, but the raindrops intensified, slicing at my skin and battling for dominion over my senses. Each heartbeat echoed the memories of fear, me father's last breath, a child's laughter lost in echoes of death, and now standing proud, my mother's shadow, taking shape from the watery grave. You are one of us now, she insisted, her grin stretched across her face, revealing jagged teeth of darkness that gnawed at my very humanity. Her fingers reached for me and dread surged through my veins, igniting the primal urge to flee. I stepped back but tripped over the roots of an ancient tree that had emerged, twisting and writhing with tendrils that sought to pull me deeper into this morbid gathering snow. I screamed, fighting against the onslaught as the shadows surged in an unholy tide, wrapping around my legs and pulling me down. Every memory I'd fought to protect was laid bare before me, the weight of despair pressing upon my chest, suffocating and relentless. And then, in the briefest moment of clarity, I remembered the light, the incandescent energy I had conjured to fight the darkness. Mustering my resolve, I drew on the flickers of love, buried deep within my fragmented soul. I ignited that spark once more, feeling it blaze against the darkness as I reached toward the spectral figures, casting them aside. Leave me, I bellowed, my voice cutting through the tempest as light radiated outward, illuminating the shadows. For an instant the ghostly figures shrank back, their mournful expressions twisting in horror as the light engulfed them. But even in this momentary reprieve, I sensed the strength waning, the rain falling like a hammer upon my shield, threatening to extinguish the flame pulsing within me. Your defiance is a gift, my mother's specter hissed, her face twisting into a horrific mask as the shadows reformed around her. You will learn, my dear child, that this is a family reunion like no other. Suddenly darkness surged like a tidal wave, crashing over me and snuffing the light. I gasped, shocked by the realization that my mother had never truly left. She rather wanted me to join her in torment, to become part of this sinister family of souls perpetually lost in gloomy eternities. The last tendrils of light flickered and faded, a soft glow drowned out by the enveloping cloak of shadows. In the depths of this bleak confinement, I felt something. Elsie, a weight I hadn't noticed until now. An unmistakable tugging at my very essence, as if the spirits were gathering, seeking to drag me under into their depthless abyss. Just when it felt as though hopelessness would claim me entirely, the air split with a thunderous crack. A blinding flash of lightning illuminated the area, and amidst the blinding white glare, I swear I saw what was left of my mother's visage, now morphed into something grotesque, something that smiled not with love but with insatiable hunger. Welcome home, she crooned, the rain splattering around us as the ground shook, threatening to swallow me whole. In those terrifying heartbeats I realized, the shadows were not only drawing me into their embrace but were manipulating reality itself to unveil depths of horror that had yet to be discovered. And then the vision blurred, twisting as my surroundings began to shatter, showing glimpses of something darker, something deeper than just the echoes of lost souls, a figure looming behind me that I had not yet seen, its presence invading my thoughts as it whispered, "It's time to rediscover your family." All clarity slipped away into a vortex of shadows, and in that moment, I felt the ominous truth one final time. The nightmare was only just beginning. As the chaos whirled around me like a tempest, I felt the shadows pulse with a malevolent life of their own, dragging me further into their chilling embrace. The laughter of the damned echoed in chorus, resonating deep within my bones, and ripples of despair surged through the air, pressing down on my shoulders like an unbearable weight. Desperation clawed at my throat as the unsettling truth unfurled within my Mindy had not just stumbled into a web of darkness. I had become an intrinsic part of it. The air thickened, swirling with stories untold, trapped in sorrow's grip, and yet, amongst the cacophony of lost voices, I sensed a flicker of recognition, a hint of hope, beckoning me from within the shadows. It was then that I caught sight of a mirror, its surface obscured by the shifting darkness, but inside it, I witnessed the faces of those long gone, trapped in a cycle of suffering and longing. Their eyes were mirrors of my own, a reflection of anguish and despair laced with moments of joy, flickering like fireflies in the dark, a cruel reminder of what had once been. Look closer, my mother's voice sighed softly, dripping with sweetness that hinted at decay. These shadows are your family, dear. They are waiting just for you. They know your heart. Her expression morphed, twisting into an unsettling grin that revealed the ugliness hidden beneath her exterior. Every inch of her recalibrated into a vibrant reflection of twisted love and despair. Join us, she urged, extending her arms as if to embrace me into the folds of darkness. Eternal is our pain and eternal is our bond. The churning memories surged, and the figures within that mirror twisted, timelines colliding into a horrific reality that wrapped around my heart. Each visitation from the bygone seemed to share its story, revealing itself to be trapped in an unending torment, cursed by betrayal or heartbreak. I grasped the edges of the mirror, its surface boiling with emotions, a thrum of sorrow and despair dancing across its depths. How could I belong to something so broken? No, I screamed against the rising deluge of shadows, the torrent of memories promising a false salvation, a feigned reunion. You're wrong. I don't belong to you. But the voices rose in unison, a tempest echoing the pain of countless lives, each note cutting deeper, pledging allegiance to the reality that clawed at my mind, wearing away at my very soul. You will join our suffering. They howled in a manic crescendo that drowned out all reason. I turned to flee, but the shadows lunged forth, rushing to engulf me, dragging me into their crushing depths. I fumbled, grasping for the light that had faded and fled so many times before, but it was extinguished by the swirling darkness, snuffing out any remnants of hope. You cannot escape your fate. My mother's hollow laughter echoed, reverberating through my mind, pushing me ever deeper into the embrace of despair. But within the turmoil, a singular thought sparked and flurried, a flicker of light hidden within me, steadfast against the shadows. I refuse, I whispered to myself, gathering the fading warmth of memories that were mine, laughter and affection carved in the core of who I was. I am not afraid of the darkness. With every ounce of bitterness turned to strength, I focused on the truth of my existence, summoning every feeling to drive back the encroaching tendrils of despair. As I channeled that light, tendrils of shadow shrieked, retreating from the brilliance that ignited my core, pushing against the tide that sought to drown me. The air grew electric, crackling with energy, and I felt the shadows waver, faltering against the brightness of my unwavering spirit. Stupid child. The dark figure barked, but I sensed my mother's figure flickering amidst the shadows, shifting with uncertainty. Deep within, I could feel an ancient energy rising, melding my wishes with my loved one's crease, a call for justice and peace. You have the power to break this cycle. And in that surge of determination, I thrust my hand into the darkness. I will liberate you, I cried, drawing forth every last ounce of warmth I could muster to repurpose their sorrow as light, a beacon of hope against the despair that encapsulated you. An explosion of luminescence ruptured forth, illuminating the shadows in blinding brilliance, cascading warmth against their icy grip. The screams of the damned morphed from anger to anguish, a horrific crescendo echoing in the abyss as they were pulled toward the warmth of the light. Suddenly, the despairing forms began to fracture, splintering apart like shattered glass, their faces transforming from contorted agony into reflections of calm, peaceful expressions that stirred within me a sense of shared loss and rejoice. With that rupture, a glimpse of clarity emerged, an opening shimmering with promise in the midst of the storm. Hope surged through my veins, igniting my purpose, and as I dove toward the portal formed from the luminous energy, I felt the shadows clinging to me, seeking to drag me back into their grasp. Join us, they howled in a final desperate plea. No, I am free, I roared as my legs propelled me forward, bursting through the veil of darkness and into the promise of light. I was no longer bound, no longer tethered to the cycle of pain that had plagued so many before. I felt the weight of my family, my lost loves, uncoiling from my spirit as their screams faded into the ether, buoyed by the light. But as I broke through and landed on the rain-soaked ground, trembling and gasping, I was left with an unbearable realization, a chilling echo pinned to my heart. While I had escaped the clutches of the abyss, the shadows lingered, wrapped around the unknown hearts of those who were still searching, wandering, and trapped in sorrow, a family still calling out for a reckoning. And as I stood amidst the torrential downpour, every drop morphing into faces of the lost, my heartbeat quickened, realizing that the true horror lies not just in what I had left behind but in what I had just survived, what I might one day become. Because even the brightest light casts the darkest shadows, and some doors once opened can never truly be shut. Come forth, beloved, the echo whispered in the rain. We've been waiting for you. Forever.